interviews, we also discussed bad public policies in order to raise awareness among people who watch our videos in Latin America and to identify the consequences of adopting. These bad policies tend to look like bright ideas founded in common sense with a laudable purpose of increasing public safety and the eterno promise of ending all problems. In one of your texts, you have sustained that the unprecedented American phenomenon on mass incarceration has been fueled by an array of incoherent policies that, despite stated goals, have not fostered public safety or public well-being. First of all, can you identify the array of policies that fueled the American phenomenon of mass incarceration based on a law and order model of correction? Which ones are the incoherences and the consequences?
Yeah, absolutely. The building up to mass incarceration in the United States really started in the 70s and 80s. In essence, beginning then and in the decades to follow, there were efforts to reduce violent crime and also to remove disparities from our sentencing and incarceration practices. And those efforts, to an extent, collided to create a situation in which our policies actually became more harmful and led to lengthy sentences and lengthy incarceration, and to where disparities continue to persist, particularly by race, class, and behavioral health status. So to give you some examples is, as you're probably familiar, there was a quote unquote war on drugs in the United States that was aiming to crack down on the proliferation of street drugs and violence associated with the use of street drugs. As guns became more frequently available to people, and particularly young people, there was a surge in gun violence. And in response to that, there were some crime laws that became more punitive and lengthier sentences associated with people who used crime or guns in the commission of a crime. At the same time, there were efforts being made to reduce racial economic disparities in our criminal justice system. So policies were enacted that removed discretion from judges and created more definitive sentencing structures and responses to crimes. And so what ultimately ended up happening was our sentencing laws and our criminal practices became more severe and more punitive, and they were paired with less discretion or opportunity for criminal justice system actors to reduce the severity based on circumstance. So our system, a system of policies that were really not focused on public health, but were more focused on swift and severe responses, resulted, paired with an inability of the system to make individualized decisions, resulted in lots more people being confined for a lot longer time with less opportunity to reverse or influence that decision. Other policies that proliferated beginning in the late 80s, but really starting in the mid 90s, were public policies that passed external to our criminal justice system. And these were policies that once people had an arrest history or a conviction history, people were removed access to kind of basic civil participation. So some examples would be federal housing legislation that barred people with certain types of drug offenses like methamphetamine drug charges or other types of drug offenses from accessing support for public housing or financial support for housing, or transportation legislation that said that if states didn't adopt driver's license restrictions policies for people charged with certain offenses, then those states wouldn't get the same type of federal distribution of public support funds. And all sorts of professional licensure restrictions, types of employment that people could obtain after they had an arrest or conviction history, the ways who could adopt or retain custody of their children based on criminal justice system involvement. Essentially, there were 45,000 policies adopted across the United States that banned access to employment, housing, disrupted family structures, education, voting rights, public assistance rights, and these proliferated around the country. So we had more people becoming involved in the system for longer, and then public policies that restricted their ability to operate as fully participating citizens once they were no longer involved with the system. So that's kind of a very brief and broad description of the incoherent and kind of non-cohesive set of policies that we're still grappling to undo.